Hello again, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Semi Pro. My name is Dalton Barrett, and in the studio with me, I've got two of my good friends.
Hi, I'm Josh Clements.
And I am Aitesam Farouk.
Aitesam. What a joke. We've got.
That's my name.
We're
Aitesam.
we're gonna try to have
The less American way.
we're gonna try to have Ait on several times throughout the coming little bit. Work him into our movie discussion as we're going. Josh, since I know this is, one of my favorite movies and one of your favorite movies, I'm going to give you the honor of introducing the film that we're watching today.
We are watching Zack Snyder's Justice League in the 4:3 aspect ratio. I can't wait. No, we're watching Mad Max Fury Road. Just a stellar movie. The fourth movie in the Mad Max franchise, or the first one because it's kind of released like 80 years after the other three.
Yes. And all three of us are super excited because we all three love this movie. Aitesam didn't just come in very last minute and remembers nothing about the movie, but it'll all come back to him as we're watching Mad Max Fury Road on this episode of Semi Pro. All right, fellas, it's time. It's time to talk about the greatest movie of all time.
Joker, released in 2019.
Aitesam 2.
Sir Billy. This is what me and you, Josh, we've come up with this thing, and we've talked about doing it on the show, but it's a trilogy of movies that we all see as, like perfect cult films, like as close to perfect as possible for like cult or nerdy movies. Fury Road is on that list. Skyfall is on that list, and The Dark Knight is on that list, and it's what we're naming the Semi Pro trilogy. So who knows? But this is one of the three that I would consider like a perfect cultish film.
I mean, yeah, it's about as close to a perfect movie as I think you can probably get, and it's a movie that there's certain movies that you kind of don't hear about any hate for, and I'd say it's The Dark Knight, and the other one, and
Skyfall.
like Skyfall, that was it. Yeah, you never really hear any hate for them outside of the the contrarians who are like, oh, The Dark Knight's not a good Batman movie. It's bad.
I mean, it's
But like,
not.
Item, we're not
Batman
having this
Begins is
discussion.
better.
Item, we're saving that discussion for next week.
Right. I did talk to somebody about us talking about these movies. Somebody who listens, and I'm sure he won't mind me sharing who he is. It was our buddy Clancy, and he does not like Fury Road. Interestingly enough, which is not all that surprising. His thing is he thinks it's really good, like special effects wise, but there's not much story, which is actually
It's more
one
practical than special effects, right?
Well, yes, it's the special effects in this movie were something like 80% practical.
Yeah, I mean, most of the special effects was just kind of removing like the wires and stuff for the stunts.
Right. So, according to, over 80% of the effects in this movie are practical effects, including stunts, makeup, and sets. CGI was used sparingly, mainly to enhance the landscape, remove stunt rigging, and for Furiosa's left arm, which is a prosthetic limb. So
I thought Charlize Theron just cut off her arm in dedication for the film.
She should have. I'm sure there was a Christian Bale would have done it. Christian Bale as Furiosa would have removed his own arm.
That's getting into the character.
It's what you need.
I need
really.
to have a prosthetic arm.
I can't. I can't wait for him to appear in Dune as a 450-pound sandworm.
I'm gonna let you go first as we're kind of doing our spoiler-free talk before we get into the plot of the movie. What did you think of Mad Max Fury Road?
So this is the only Mad Max movie I've watched. I haven't watched the previous ones,
It's the only
and
one that
coming from
matters.
that, good to know because I enjoyed it a lot because this movie, whatever it is, it's very self-aware, which I like. This movie's made for action. This movie doesn't take itself too seriously in some aspects, or doesn't try and like explain or justify everything. It's just a crazy post-apocalyptic world where it shows that people who are left to fend for themselves are just gonna end up this crazy. And then they add cool music bits with exploding cars, and I love it.
There are cool music bits. I like it. Yeah, that's kind of the same sentiments I have. It's like this movie is exactly what it needed to be. There's nothing in this movie that tries to make this movie more than it is, which is not all that common for movies, especially of this budget. Like even your movies that are somewhat self-aware in that way, like your Avengers Endgames and Infinity Wars and all of those movies, still kind of think they're more than they are. And then of course you got like Zack Snyder's Justice League and movies on the opposite end of the spectrum that have no idea what they are and think that take themselves way too seriously. But this movie doesn't, which is amazing. And it's so beautiful to sit down and watch a movie that you don't have to turn your brain off. The movie kind of Item, you say this a lot. You're like, yeah, it's a turn your brain off movie, but you don't have to turn your brain off when you watch this one. The
Mm,
movie kind of does that for you.
Yeah, the movie does it for you very well.
Like the movie just turns your
Mm.
brain off for you, and it's incredible. So, Josh, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, like you guys say, the movie knows what its goal is. It knows that it's an action movie, and it doesn't like. There's a couple of moments where it kind of sways away from that, and it has like a little more sort of character-driven emotional scenes, like that that moment where Furiosa realizes that her entire family and dreams are dead, and she just kind of screams. But like that's immediately followed up by probably the best motorcycle chase I've ever seen.
It's great.
It's but yeah, this movie's just there is no aspect of this movie which falls behind. Like acting, writing, characters, action, cinematography, effects, music, everything is so perfect, and it's kind of mind blowing because like it shouldn't be. Like, usually in these kind of things, something falls behind where, the music lets it down or the cinematography lets it down. Or particularly like in action movies, the writing will let it down where the writing falls a bit flat. It doesn't quite gel as well with everything else. But this just kind of, it knocks it out of the park every time and it blows my mind.
There's nothing. There's no part of this movie that I have a complaint about, which might be my bias. But there's no part of this movie that I'm like, yeah, don't care for that bit. Like even the Furiosa thing where they do go a little more serious for a minute. I like it. Like there's nothing in this movie where I think, yeah, you could have probably cut that and it would have improved the overall movie. Or it's like, yeah, I understand why they put that in, but I don't really like it. There's not a frame of this movie that I don't care for.
Yeah, like genuinely, there's nothing that's like, oh, okay, this part's coming up, I'll just tune out for a second and tune back in. You can't take your eyes off it once you start watching. It kicks itself into 11th gear and then never drops down for a second.
Well, and that's another thing. And Item, you can comment on this because you're a visual guy. You like fancy visuals. It's why you like Tasm too, and it sucks. Um,
Aitesam 2 is great.
this movie is also beautiful. Like it's one of the
Oh,
prettiest
Oh yeah.
absolutely.
movies. Like we were talking about the end of Skyfall, how it may be the we were just talking about this before we started recording the other day. Um, the final fight in Skyfall is one of the prettiest like fight sequences of all time. This whole movie is just gorgeous. The bright blue sky mixed with the orange of the sand and like it's a gorgeous, colorful like It's well graded, it's well shot. Like this movie is very pretty.
I
So good. Like seeing a movie that has a visual that resonates with me because I live in Saudi Arabia in the desert and I feel the heat just from the screen. It was just amazing.
I
Made me
wasn't gonna
feel
bring
right
it
at
up.
home.
I'm
Well,
glad
I,
you
I
brought it
had
up.
to. I have to bring it up. Hey, I'm watching the movie on the screen and I feel like sand hitting my face. Then I go out and then there's actual sand hitting my face. So, it's a good experience.
So do you guys have lightning storms that burn things when you drive through them there too?
Sometimes it happens.
I we were talking about the Mad Max game just before we started recording, and Item's living through the immersive VR Mad Max game.
Oh, dude, I'm every day I'm out there and I'm trying to get my car done.
It's Mad Max VR, but it's
It's
just Item's life.
it's a hey Mad Max Spider Monkey Road.
Okay, quick question for you guys. So in
Mad
this
Monkey
Mad Max
23.
universe,
20. That's my number plate on my car. XXIII.
Oh,
right, right. Quick question for you guys. So in the like let's say you're in the Mad Max apocalypse, right? You're stuck there. Me and Item can't drive, so we're already dead by this point.
Yep.
What's your role? Because I want to be the dude who shoots flamethrowers out of his guitar. I can't play guitar, but I
Wow.
want to be him.
You took the good role,
ooh,
man.
that yeah. Although that guy does die, I guess everybody dies.
Wait,
I
no,
mean,
not.
hey, I live, I die, I live again.
I that's such a tough question. I'd want to be one of those. You remember those dudes with the giant cane arms that just like walked on the ground that were just there? I want to be one of those guys because they
Yeah.
looked like they're the only ones who got away unscathed. That would be my role. I'd just like fade into the background, or one of
Uh,
the starving people at the beginning and end of the movie as Immortal Joe is giving water like with the buckets. Just a normal guy, so I can make it out unscathed.
I actually I saw something about this recently. I think they call the water at the beginning of the movie like aquacola or something, and then at some point Knox says he should be like McFeasting in Valhalla,
Yes,
and
yeah,
it's
you're right, right, right.
and it's like it's kind of neat because oh, I was gonna say George R. R. Martin, but I know that's not right.
George Miller.
Um,
We
George
we, we
Miller,
don't
he
we don't take his name here.
I've never even seen Game of Thrones. I saw the first season, I think, and I dropped out.
Still
But like George Miller is such a god at world building in so specific ways. Like the idea that McFeasting and McDonald's and franchise and that stuff survived the apocalypse to the point of that's what the language is now. Like just that those tiny little details get sprinkled out throughout the movie are so it's like a like just the cherry on top of it all.
Well, and if you'll notice, it's the people who were born after the apocalypse started who are talking like that because it kind of sets up where Immortal Joe is kind of, or at least this is what I drew from it. And we'll get into the plot in just a second. Immortal Joe to me feels like he's making this stuff up to sort of build himself up with his army and to his children as like, for lack of a better term, like a prophet. Um, and so he's using all of these things that he knew because theoretically, Immortal Joe was around before the apocalypse started. Because Max was around before the apocalypse started, and Immortal Joe is clearly older than Max. But all of these soldiers, all of the children of Immortal Joe, were born after that started. So he can feed them whatever lies he wants. He can call it aquacola. He can call it, McFeasting. Like he can say all of those things to these people, and they'll buy it because they weren't around when McDonald's was a thing and when Coca Cola was a thing, and all of these different elements. Like he can sell all of that to them, and if you'll notice, like when that stuff is said like that, it cuts to Max's face, and he's always making he never says anything about it, but he's making a face about it, like how dumb it is.
But
And so
to be fair, Max never says anything in the movie.
he's got some lines.
I think he's got like 15,
Yeah,
something like that.
he kind of grunts, and well, half the movie he's in a muzzle, and then once the muzzle's off, he just grunts and and goes "Grrr." Like that's
Surprised.
that's his
Okay.
dialogue.
That's what surprised me because I watched Mad Max for the first time, watching the only Mad Max, and I thought he was the main character, and he's like the third most important character in the movie.
Oh
He's
yeah,
sort of
Yeah,
Max is never really the main character of any of the movies he's in. Like he's usually just kind of vibing his way through the wasteland, and he gets
the,
drawn into stuff.
the movie should be called Furiosa Road.
I hate you.
That's an awful pun. That's awful.
That was horrible. Me and Josh were talking when we did our Doom discussions 2 weeks ago and last week. This is the perfect way to do a Doom movie, just like this.
Yeah,
But on the surface of Mars instead of Saudi
on the
Arabia.
surface of Saudi Arabia. Yes.
To be fair, what's the difference?
Right. Um, but you don't have Doom guy or Doom Slayer as your main character. Someone else as your main character, and you just kind of rope in Doom Slayer into that, like this movie did with Max, because you can do that silent protagonist thing with it.
And
Um,
this is like the perfect blueprint for a video game movie because this movie essentially is an escort mission from like a game. You have to get from point A to point B, and then post-apocalyptic stuff happens throughout.
well, so George
It's
Miller
the
did the first three Mad Max movies,
he.
and
It's kind of incredible that he's the only one who's ever directed a Mad Max movie.
I mean,
Because
for a franchise this, I mean, there's only four of them, but it's got such a legacy. You're right. Like it is surprising that nobody else has made one, or the studio hasn't stepped in and like made one themselves.
also just like I don't know, you think of Mad Max, and I don't know why, but my mind, I can't remember when the first one came out, but my mind goes back to like the 70s, and I always picture George Miller as being a really old guy. Like I know he wasn't always, but whenever I think of him, I just think of, a George R.R. Martin type.
We don't
And
take his name here.
I
so
mean,
like I
he is 76 years old, so he is an old man. He was already in
right,
his
but like
40s when the first one came out, but
But that's what I mean though. It's just like it's weird to me because in these types of things, usually what happens, like the new Indiana Jones movie that's coming out, they've got James Mangold to direct it. 'Cause Steven Spielberg's like 90,000 years old,
right.
and it's incredible to me that not only is George Miller directing all these movies, he's only gotten better.
Yeah, well, and he said I want to say it was for Thunderdome, which was the third one. He wanted that movie to be just a consistent car race that didn't end. Like it's a constant, car chase. The whole movie is, and he wasn't able to do that because they stepped in and stopped him. But then when Fury Road comes out, that's exactly what it is, which is fun. George Miller, famed director of Happy Feet and Babe, Pig in the Big City.
My
Um,
my
Is
favorite
that
George Miller
real?
quote. Yeah, my favorite George Miller quote was like, he got asked if he would return for Happy Feet 3, and he just went, "I'd rather kill myself."
it's so fascinating to me what movies he has done. Just looking at his filmography, because you have the three Mad Max movies, and then I've got his filmography pulled up, and then it's Happy Feet 1 and 2, Babe, Babe 2, Pig in the Big City, The Witches of Eastwick, and it's like it's like what a weird filmography for this guy to have, because
He's a diverse director.
he directed the Twilight Zone movie, like it's just
Wait, no way.
uh, it's on. I
No,
haven't looked to see, because sometimes they'll put producers in on that, but I'm pretty. Yeah, he was he directed one of the shorts in the Twilight Zone movie. So did Spielberg, interestingly enough. Um, but yeah, so he finally got his dream of making a Mad Max movie that was a 2 hour car chase scene, and it's this movie. And if you'll notice, we haven't really started breaking down the plot yet, because it's really hard to break down the plot of this movie.
There is no plot.
Because there is no
because
plot.
it's an escort mission from a video game.
That
Right.
There is no plot should be the subtitle of the semi-pro podcast, because I feel like every movie that me and Dalton talk about, every time we come on here, we're always like, yeah, it's really tough to break down this movie because there isn't a plot, or this movie isn't good, or our lives are miserable.
But this one is good. This is the first movie we've done
This is
since.
genuinely.
Well, I liked Doom Annihilation, but this is the first movie we've done since Kong 2005 that is like a really good movie.
Well,
Um,
this movie's like well made. Not
yes.
only like it's not just it's not like fun. It's actually well made.
Right. On a technical level, on a story level, like it's well made, it's well acted, it's well directed. We're getting a sequel to this movie. I'm assuming with Tom Hardy returning.
Yeah,
Um,
he signed a contract for I think 3 movies.
okay.
Wasn't there a Furiosa spin-off movie that was in the works?
Yes, both of those
That's still happening.
are slated for 2023, but who knows? If there were pushbacks or anything with COVID, I have no idea. But the Furiosa spinoff or it's a prequel, and then the Mad Max: The Wasteland are both slated to come out in 2023, which is neat. But yeah, so let's jump into as best we can the plot of Mad Max: Fury Road. So Josh, I'll let you kick us off because I don't remember how this movie starts. I watched it last night.
Neither do I, and I didn't watch it last night.
I'm watching it right now.
That's why you're the one talking about it.
Yeah, so the movie opens and you get Max's famous car, the black whatever it is, because I don't know what cars are. But
They're
you get
vehicles
Max.
that you drive.
Thanks, Item.
You're welcome, man.
You
Thanks,
put
Leslie
gasoline
Nielsen.
in them, you hit the gas, and then they go
Yeah, and then you go
vroom,
forward. Whoosh.
vroom.
Yeah, this movie starts off with Max with really long hair and a long beard eating a lizard while he looks over the wasteland next to his car. Then he gets into it. He drives away. Like 4,000 other cars follow him. They total him, and then they rip him away from his car. They bring him to their base. They tattoo his back. They rip apart his car. He tries to escape them, fails like 6 times in a row, which
Because
is
he's the worst
you know
protagonist in history.
but Max doesn't know how to do anything. Um, and his survival is purely just because he's too angry to die. And
Hey,
it's
sounds
like
just like me.
he's literally me.
It may be
Literally
it
me.
may be me like looking too far into it because I do have a habit of doing that with movies I like, especially ones that are as simple as this. But it feels to me like Max is still trying to operate in the ways that the world were before the apocalypse happened. And yet he's living in a world where the apocalypse is happening, and yet he's trying to fight like he would when he was a cop and do all these things in a way that is normal-ish, and yet everybody else is operating in this weird post-apocalyptic way, and he's
McFeasting world.
right. They're McFeasting in Valhalla, and he's still trying to like, you know, do normal things at least to an extent. Once again, it's probably me looking too far into it, but that's kind of the vibe I got from this one. You don't really get that, because the first Mad Max is relatively normal. It's just there's a gas shortage, and that causes people to act a little spooky. And then they get progressively like weirder and more post-apocalyptic as they go. But this one is like full on post-apocalypse. Like there's nothing of the old world left. And so it kind of seems like he's still trying to operate in that old style. Because that is kind of the narrative of the other three movies is him adjusting. But I don't know. Like I said, could be looking too far into it. But yeah, you're right. He's trying to break out, and he keeps failing because he's the worst
Well,
protagonist in history.
I was gonna say I don't know about him trying to function in ways of the old world. That said, Miller is a great writer who does seem to understand. Like he's really good at immersive writing, particularly. Like say world building and making these characters feel lived in.
Evident
Um,
in Happy Feet and Happy Feet 2.
but evident in Babe Pig in the City. um, but I would have said that Max is more just sort of haunted by his failures than trying to survive, because there's always that girl keeps on like popping up, which is I think it's his daughter.
I would
You know,
assume so.
well, the first movie is his wife and daughter get murdered by these people who are like precursors to, I guess, the insane people who now run the world. Uh, which a neat reference there is that the main bad guy in the first Mad Max movie is played by the bad guy, the guy who plays Morton Joe, which
Right.
is again, I swear these people didn't age. Even though
Well,
he looks 1,000 years old and is kind of fat. Uh,
well,
and
they put that rubber
I,
muscle suit on him, so he looks a little better.
I think he's dead now, actually.
Is he actually? That's kind of
Yeah,
sad.
I'm pretty sure that he died because he was also the person who's going to play Martian Manhunter in the cancelled Justice League movie that no one stops talking about.
Right.
Uh,
Which we'll have to talk about that towards the end, but it's definitely worth mentioning. He did. He died in 2020. So, um,
Dang.
how
I was
sad.
gonna
uh,
suggest him be cast in the live action Twisted Metal movie as Sweet Tooth because he looks exactly like him.
nah, that actually would have been pretty good.
Right
The,
internal,
the,
shiny and chrome to the gates of Valhalla.
So,
the well, yeah, it's kind of interesting seeing him like trying to escape from this base because there's a lot of ways where they're like anti-story writing. Because in a typical movie, what would happen is he'd go for one of these ways, and they would succeed, and then the rest of the movie would be him trying to escape this place and then getting chased by everyone. But instead, it's just like he tries, and there's a gate at the top because of course they're not going to let people climb out of their pits.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
why would they? And then it progresses on, and we find out that there's this guy called Morton Joe who has a giant man baby for a son and a giant muscle man baby for a son.
Well,
Uh,
and he's
and he,
got lots and lots of children because he has been
well, he's got war boys.
right, and he has been consistently. At least it's never like explicitly said that they're all his children, but I mean, I would assume there's no reason
Oh
to
no, because
assume that they're not.
well, no, I would have said that they weren't because he's got his wives who he's trying to like. A big deal is that one of them's pregnant now.
Right.
Um, which like I feel like it wouldn't be that big an issue if they weren't, if they were constantly pumping out children. But he controls the water supplies in the region, and he graces the lower people with aquacola. Uh, um, and then he finds out that his wives have been taken conspicuously just after he sent his top lieutenant Furiosa on a run to Gastown, I think it is.
Which is,
Um,
it's not necessary to see the other Mad Max movies to see this, but the plot of what caused the apocalypse was the Earth ran out of water and it ran out of gas. It ran out of gas first
like
and then ran out of water. And so those
which
are
they touch on it a little bit by showing news articles for
it's
about
the
30
opening
seconds.
credits, right? Yeah, they mention it and then that's all you need to know about it. And so but that is the plot of the first two, I think, Mad Max movies, and then I think Thunderdome is just I don't remember much about Thunderdome, but so we're in this world where people don't have water and people don't have gas, and Immortan Joe is providing water and gas to people. So that's how he's been able to build this empire over the course of the last, however long. The oxygen thing, I think, may have been something to do with Thunderdome, but I can't remember exactly because he's got oxygen and his two man babies, both the man baby and then the strong man baby, they both have oxygen too. Um, so I would assume that has something to do with Thunderdome, but I don't. Who knows?
I Thunderboom's the only one that I haven't seen in a long time. I remember I watched Mad Max and Mad Max 2 before I went to go see Fury Road in cinemas, and then I just never watched Thunderdome because I always heard it was kind of rough around the edges, let's say. Um, but yeah, the Furiosa's gone off to get Gastown, quote unquote, and then she like ditches that halfway through because she's harboring these wives, these young girls who she's trying to get to a safe place.
They call them
Because
breeders. Is the proper Fury Road term. the road to get to Gastown and Bullet Town, we can't forget Bullet Town, which is where they get the bullets, is called the Fury Road. And so we're kind of thinking, okay, it'll be this trip to Gastown, and Max is going to stop her because that's what Max does. But then she turns immediately off of Fury Road, and the title of the movie is made mute, and the entire story changes pretty much in an instant from what you would think it is, which is another thing that's just great about this movie is even after seeing it several times, there's still like some things that surprise you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I've seen this movie. I think I watch it nearly every few months, like every 3 months maybe. I just and I could tell you the whole movie off by heart, but
I can't say the same.
well, that's the thing. Like I can tell the whole movie off by heart, but then every time I watch it, it feels like I'm watching it for the first time again.
Right, because the story is so simple. It's I was talking to somebody about food the other day, and we were talking about like what makes good food good. And in a lot of situations, the best food is just very simple. Like you can really overcomplicate like food, but simple food tastes good. And this movie is just bare bones simple, which is part of the reason that every time you watch it, it feels like the first time you're watching it because there's nothing to like really distract from the movie. Like there's not much plot in the way of that movie. Um, like you can just kind of get into the movie pretty easily.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You can literally just jump into any moment. You're kind of like, oh, okay, I can gauge what's happening here.
Right. So Furiosa's on her way with the breeders. They're in the tanker of this the war rig, which is what they're transferring the gas in, and they're on their way. And Morton Joe sends out his his war boys, his army of either his children or not his children, doesn't really matter either way, sends them out, and they're going, and one of them by the name of Nux, played by Nicholas Holt, which I didn't realize, he's one of the initiation things for the war boys is they get a blood bag, which is a human being that they drain the blood out of and put into um, these war boys. And so Max is Nux's war bag or blood bag. So he straps him to the front of his car, and they all go on this chase to try and track down Furiosa.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Immortan Joe sends out his entire army to go and get this Furiosa because, she's got his wives and his water and his gas,
And
you
his
know,
unborn child.
Everything.
and his unborn child. And he sends them off, and he's like, I think he says that Max has like high octane blood or something, and Max
Yeah.
just this entire time, Max is just really annoyed to be there. Like he's not actively trying to get out. He's more just really frustrated with everything. Like he grunts at everything. He's annoyed that they're stolen his car. He's annoyed that they're stolen his bloods. And I think it's in Tom Hardy's contract that every movie he has to be gagged with some kind of mask.
Yeah, that is true. It very much looks like um the Bane mask just with holes in it. And he's wearing it's called a muzzle. They call it a muzzle because apparently Max bites. I think that's what they say. He's
Yeah,
feral.
Wow.
he's also like strapped up to the front of their car, which I love. Like he's right at the front, tied up. He could die at any second, and they just don't care.
And neither does he. That's the thing. Like he doesn't seem to care at all. He's like, yeah, if I live, I live. If I die, I die. It's fine. And so yeah, so this is like the first initial chase of the movie, car chase, and it really never ends. This car chase pretty much just continues through the rest of the movie with various little sequences where they start and stop and start again. Um, and through all of this battle, Furiosa, because she's the actual protagonist of this movie and actually knows what she's doing, is able to sway off and kill off all of the war boys on the way, except for Nux, and
Played by
Max.
Nicholas Holt.
Right, Nux, played by Nicholas Holt, famed actor Nicholas Holt, um, and Max, who's his blood sack. Um, and so, I love the little detail that Nux, even later on in the movie, because Nux eventually, learns the error of his ways. Um, he he keeps referring to Max as Bloodbag even after he's on the team of the good guys,
Yeah, even even by the end of the movie, he just calls him Bloodbag,
which is great.
and yeah, their friendships kind of. I don't want to say like the core of the movie, but Max is kind of growing relationships with these people that he's just stuck with, that he doesn't want to be near, and he's just forced to hang out with. Is kind of it's kind of the heart of the movie almost, because he like I say he doesn't want to be with any of these people. He's just forced to because of the situation that they're all in,
Well, yeah,
and he
it's the idea of the protagonist who doesn't want to help the people he's helping. He just has something to gain from it, so he has to, which is always a story point I like. A lot of movies have done that, and I, depending on the character, I really like that story where it's like, yeah, this guy clearly doesn't want to help these people out, so we just have to give him a reason to want to. And that's very much Max in this movie.
but yeah, exactly, and I think Furiosa drives into this giant desert sandstorm to lose the rest of the convoy that's trying to chase her, and Max and Bloodbag drive right into it, and that's where the real cinematography and color of this movie starts to pop, because there's fire tornadoes, there's all the sandstorm, which is this great vibrant orange. Then there's blue lightning that comes out of everywhere, and every now and again the screen goes black and white for those flashes, and it is absolutely gorgeous.
It's the
It's one of the
best
best.
kind of visual eye candy that I've ever seen.
Exactly,
It's so
it
good.
genuinely some of the best visuals I've ever seen in a movie, and Nux and Max end up crashing out, and Furious is like, yeah, okay, the rest of them wouldn't have entered in, so I've probably got a quick minute to like refuel and recharge and make sure everything's okay. During which time Max, who is chained to Nux, drags him to their truck because he can't get rid of these people.
Yeah.
um,
Well, and he
which
carries Nux with him. He's got him like tossed over his shoulder with a shotgun that doesn't work because he tried to shoot off the chain, and he starts, he just points a shotgun at the people, and he wants him to cut him free and give him some water, and that's basically how he gets roped into to traveling with these people. So they cut Nux free, and then Nux, they just leave him there for dead, which makes sense. Um,
Right. Well, Max tries to drive away, but then because this is Furiosa's war rig, she's rigged it so that she's the only one who can drive it, unless you enter in a certain sequence, which she trusts Max with at some point. But it's great to see that kind of relationship between Furiosa and the war rig. Like you get such a sense of history between it all, and
well, you can tell
it's
she's been
really
doing this for a while. Like you can tell
right. Yeah.
she's not Nothing in this movie feels like it's the first time they're. It feels it's a very lived in world. People talk about Star Wars like that a lot, where it's like, yeah, but even this movie more so than even Star Wars, because everything in this movie feels like it's all happened before. Everybody's used to stuff like this going on, which usually with post-apocalyptic movies, even like the best ones, they kind of have this sense of like, oh, everything's happening for the first time. This character is going through a situation like this for the first time, but with this, you never really get that sense. Everybody is sort of used to the apocalypse at this point, which is
You
neat.
just get a glimpse into a day in the life of the world of Mad Max.
Right, right. That's kind of the best way you can put it. Um,
And this is just kind of Australia normally, really. This is we have this is how our Australian friends go to school.
they take the war
Hey,
rig.
hey, 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 man, that's how I went to school. Come on.
Now I would believe you took the war rig to school, Aitesam.
Right,
I was
exactly.
a war rig, man. I
That was
had a
my
blood
nickname.
bag.
That was my nickname in high school. Oh yeah. But
The real war rig were the friends we made along the way.
Oh, yes.
the rest of the movie is just at this point it's Furiosa and Max and Co try and run away from the 15 million people that they've angered, and they just keep on getting chased. And there's not a single moment where they can be like, okay, let's take a break and let's make a plan, because everyone in the world wants to kill them.
It is very much like, you have your uncut gems or your good times movies like that. Your Sadie Brothers movies, where the idea behind them is there's never a breathing moment. This is going to be tense for the next hour and a half. And this movie does that, but in a way that is significantly, because those movies are whatever the opposite of fun is those movies. And I really like Good Time, but I'm not huge on Uncut Gems. But so you have those movies where it's like it's tense for 2.5 hours, and it's just you never get like to take a deep breath. Whereas this movie does the same thing but fun, like because they're not going to kill off Max or Furiosa, the two characters who you actually care about. They may kill off some of the moms, but you don't really care about them. And so there's a sense of like uneasiness because you're never sure, like there's pressure on these characters throughout the whole movie. But you still have this sort of there's still fun about it. Like you're still having a great time with these characters watching the movie.
Right, exactly. And it just as a movie, like I say, a Safdie Brothers movie is anxiety inducing. This is more sort of John Wick 3, where it's like you know they're not going to kill Keanu Reeves, but you're excited to see how Keanu Reeves is going to kill all of these people.
Right. Exactly. That's the same sense it has. And so they're driving and they make a deal with some dudes so that they can pass through a particular area, and then these dudes drop some rocks so that nobody else can come through. But now they have to run away from these guys because they're being chased by a
So
guy with
they were meant to come alone, and then they realized that Furiosa was not alone, and in fact seemed to bring literally everyone in Australia with her.
because one woman goes into labor in the car. It's incredible.
It's all going to hell. It's awful. um, and I also just wanted to talk about the design of the movie. Like I say, I can't say enough. George Miller knows how to make a world feel lived in, and you get that sense with this too, where like the cars just looked cobbled together. I think one of one of Furiosa's gas pedals is like the foot measuring thing from a shoe store.
Yeah. And
Um,
but it has this cool like locking function where she could just lock
right,
the
yeah.
pedal like cruise control, but with with
She
a shoe
just she
measurer.
slams it down. She just slams it into the floor and it gets stuck there. There's like, at one point she loses her wheel, so she replaces it with a wrench. There's one of the people who comes from Bullet Town. He's like wearing a headdress and he's got teeth which are just bullets because of course he does. Why wouldn't he?
Right, and the
Like,
leader of Bullet Town has this weird nose thing.
yeah, he's
And
got he's got like a metal nose.
and he's cut the nipples out of his shirt so that his nipple piercings are constantly showing.
I, it's such a great, like, whoever designed this movie had so much fun with it where everything seems to have a purpose as to why it's there.
Even the
You
nipple
know,
piercing.
Even the
even the
nipple
nipple
piercings.
piercings. There's the War Boys also have this like salute because Immortan Joe's built up this cult mentality where you sacrifice yourself for him and you go to Valhalla of Chrome and Eternal, and it there's this salute that they do, and it's really cool because they like interlock their fingers, and it makes a V8 engine, which is just again it makes this world feel lived in, and you kind of get the sense that yeah, cars and gas are literally everything.
Well, and
There's
that makes
nothing
sense.
else
If there's a
anymore.
gas shortage, people are going to start wanting more
Watch,
gas,
yeah.
and it's logical. It makes perfect sense as you're going through it. And so that's some of my favorite stuff in the whole movie is just those little details like that. Like they go and part of their initiation as a war boy is you get a steering wheel to a particular car and that's your car to drive. And I like that the steering wheels come on and off so that they can be replaced. Like all of these different things, you can tell what's most important to these people. And over the course of the last, 20, 30 years or so since the apocalypse happened, Immortan Joe has taken this opportunity to make those things important to these people in a way where it's borderline like worship. They worship the cars, they worship the gas, and the chrome, the shiny chrome, which is a thing that doesn't exist when you're in the desert. That's something that becomes important to them, and they spray paint their mouths because of it, which I couldn't imagine how bad that would taste.
I mean, how
Oh yeah.
good it tastes. The taste of chrome. You're telling me you've never, sucked on a penny?
I forget that I lives in the Mad Max Fury Road universe.
Hey, I do, man. Come on. Every time I go to school, I just spray paint my mouth. And just, I live, I die, I live again. And then I go and study something.
Imagine going into McDonald's and you're like, yeah, can I get a burger? What kind of burger do you want? Yeah, I'll take your shiny and chrome burger.
It's the future from SpongeBob.
Hey, I want the Big Tasty burger, but replace the Big Tasty sauce with some silver spray paint.
Yeah. I don't want a Pepsi. Can you just give me a can of silver spray paint? I can sort myself out.
On the little details before I forget, the guitar player. There's a guitar player strapped to this car because their cars don't have radios because there's no radios in this world. So, clearly, there's nobody broadcasting anything.
They have a live concert.
They have a live concert.
It's not just the guitar player. It's drums. It's a whole orchestral car.
While you're driving.
It's a band, right? And they play while they're driving to keep the people entertained and get them going. It's like back in the old times, you'd play the drums and stuff when you went into battle. But the guitar player, the one that he's the center of attention, right? Your guitar player is always the center of your musical piece.
From school.
He doesn't have eyes, which would make his hearing better because when you lose a sense, your other senses are boosted.
He's Daredevil.
He's Daredevil, right? Which makes him a better guitar player because he can hear better. Which it's like all of those little tiny details like that. George Miller is a beautiful man.
I took that more as he doesn't have eyes, so he can't he doesn't get to focus on the battle and stuff. Like if you had eyes, you'd see that all of these cars are crashing in front of you, and that would mess up your rhythm, that would mess up your focus. He doesn't have that, so he can only think of one thing, and that's the guitar that he's playing because it's all he can hear.
It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible.
They built a practical flamethrower guitar, which is just such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
So we got to go really quick through the rest of the movie, which is easy. They're taking the women, the mothers, to the land where Furiosa came from, which they called the Green Place, because it was before the Earth ran out of water, so there was greenery there. And they go and they meet the mothers there, and there's a naked woman on a pole, and so
that doesn't happen in Saudi Arabia, by the way. Just clearing that out there. That's wrong.
No, it'd be a woman in a hijab.
There would be no woman.
But yeah, that the naked woman in the tower, that was George Miller's actress to play Wonder Woman in his Justice League movie.
Fascinating.
Fun fact for you there.
Another fun fact: this movie was shot in sequence, so that's rare.
Oh, nice.
So this whole movie, the actors are experiencing the story as we are, which is a neat little detail. Tom
Hardy also hated making this movie, so I get the feeling that Max's anger towards everyone wasn't just an act.
That was just Tom Hardy being Tom Hardy on set.
I hear stories like that. I hear stories like that from Tom Hardy so often. He's very Daniel Craig in every movie he's in. He just seems to hate being in it.
Why is he an actor?
Because he needs to make money somehow.
That's
I
like
mean,
he's a really good actor, and there's a couple of movies where he seems to have fun. Like he seems to like Venom. He seems to have a lot of fun on Venom. It's just
yeah.
everything else.
The
Everything else just seems to
Oscar-winning
hate it.
movie Venom. See the
Venom, see the
movie.
movie. But
Please.
yeah, they please see the movie. We need this to succeed. We want the spum C to become an actual thing. um, but yeah, they they go to the green place, and it turns out that this place where Furiosa was raised is now dead, and they're actually in the green place. It's all sand, and everyone's depressed and horrible and miserable, and it's now just a bunch of old women. And so Furiosa's upset. They're just like, okay, we're just gonna keep driving because what else can you do? Uh,
Across the Salt Lake, which is presumably an ocean.
Utah?
That's the once again. There's all these little details where you're like, okay, I would assume it's this, but you guys may have taken it a different way. I assumed the oceans dried up, and so the Salt Lake, quote unquote, would have been what used to be an ocean in the post-apocalypse, or like a big sea, or something. Because we're not really sure where, but that was my thinking. Because I think in some in some ways, like when a sea, like a smaller sea, dries up, it leaves like just a salt pit on the ground. So that was what I took it as. And so they start to drive across it, and Max comes in, and he's like, "Yeah, that's the he goes his separate ways." But then he's like, "Yeah, I guess I care about these people or whatever." So he turns around and he says, "That's not going to happen, but I've got a plan." And his plan is to turn around and go immediately back to where they came from and take over a Morton Joe's land. And it leads to the greatest sequence in the movie, which is just the drive back, which it's like the drive there took 3/4 of the movie, and the drive back takes 1/4 of the movie. And it's just like all of the action sequences that happened in the first 3/4 happen again, but better and faster and quicker. And it's an amazing, just like, car chase through this place, like, and they're just going for it, like gunning it, and fighting all these people off. Like the people from Bullet Town are there, the people from Gas Town are there, and Morton Joe and the War Boys are there, and they're just like taking them all out as they go.
And yeah, like I say, it's like the first three quarters of the movie condensed into one, and it's some of the most bonkers action I've ever seen. Like there's people who are just on these giant sticks that are just waving about, and they just like they pick up people and then drop them, or they swing down to someone and they try and stab them.
I'm pretty sure they have chainsaws.
Yeah, one. There's a few of them that just have chainsaws and are just running after people. A few of them, they have like these explosive spears. It's bonkers and it's insane and it's fantastic, just like the rest of the movie. And like there's
Most
so
of it's
much.
practical,
Right,
which is
yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
everything's practical pretty much. Like it's so insane to me, and you can't talk about everything that's great about this movie, in one sitting because it is basically a perfect movie. And
It's a
even as
perfect
much as
action movie.
well, that's the thing. Even as much as like there's not as much talking, um, there's certain lines into it where my mouth was just gaped open because it's so balls to the walls insane that you can't help but think, wow, this is just fantastic. Like there's a moment where I think it's the guy from Bullet Town is chasing after the war rig, and he gets sniped and he's blind, so he's shooting these two guns, and uh he says something like brother clock, brother brother desert eagle or something. The choirs of death are singing after you or something like that. And there's
While
never been a
unloading
better
clips
line.
on clips.
yes.
Just like endlessly shooting. And there's a giant orchestral, music going in the background. Like, the OST to this movie is insane too. Everything is fantastic, and it all gets exemplified in that last sort of 20 minutes because they just kick it into 11th gear. They just go all the way,
Well,
and
and they wrap everything up. There's so much in the first two acts of this movie that you're kind of thinking like there's no way they wrap all this up, but they do, and they wrap it up in a way that is satisfying, in a way that the ending of this movie should have been one of those movie endings where it's like, oh, the ending of the rest of the movie's really good, but the ending kind of fell flat. But it wasn't, because they knew to have restraint at the beginning and pay it all off at the end. And so this car chase back is so amazing. And then they get back, and Immortan Joe is dead. They kill him. Nux is able to
oh,
have the final blow
they
on him.
they rip his face off.
Oh no, that's right. Furiosa gets that. Furiosa ties up
Yeah, she
chain to his mask
like
and rips his face off.
and throws it into a tire, and it just straight up tears everything. It's beautiful.
Yeah, Immortan
then-
Joe gets to kill
then,
Erectus, whatever his first name was, the man baby,
Yeah,
man baby
Erectus,
number
yeah.
one.
Right, yeah, and then Nux and Elvis Presley's granddaughter like drive the war rig into the rocks to block off everyone else from getting in there.
Yeah, and he gets to sacrifice himself for our heroes, which is great. He had a moment earlier with one of the mothers, which was a nice little tender moment they shared, and so he decides to join the team.
Points
of the
out
good
his tumors.
guys. Right. It's horrible.
Tender
tumors.
moment in Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes. She comforts him. That's part of the reason where I assumed they were Immortan Joe's children, because they kind of do like a father or a mother son kind of thing there, where it's like even if that's not her kid, because she looks a little young for that, it's like they still share that moment.
I took that as a like romantic sort of thing.
Ah, see, I took it as either, well, they're one of two things. They're either siblings or or
I
they're
mean, that's gonna be very awkward. Is
They're-
this George R. R. Martin?
right.
Were you right in the beginning?
I mean, in Australia, there's not a lot of choice, and then in post-apocalypse Australia, there's even less.
The
they
main
get back.
goal is reproduction.
They get back, and Furiosa and the team ride the car, which was Morton Joe's car with his dead body laying on the hood of the car, up to the top. They open up the water, they let everybody drink, and they take over as the new leaders of this little town. Giving hope that these people will live, the people in Immortan Joe's town will live a better life. I think did they call it the Citadel?
Yes, it's the Citadel.
Yeah, the people who live in the Citadel are going to live a better life now with Furiosa in charge, as opposed to Immortan Joe. Max slips away in the crowd, never to be seen again. The man from nowhere goes back to nowhere, and then roll credits, and it's beautiful, and it's such a satisfying ending to such a satisfying movie, and I love every second of it. And I watched it last night, and I kind of want to watch it again.
This
I mean,
discussion makes me want to watch it again, and I haven't for a while.
Well, yeah, I was saying to you guys before this. Every time someone talks to me about Fury Road, or I see a thing from Fury Road, I'm like, I should rewatch that, and then I end up.
Every time you say
it, like,
Fury Road, Brothers in Arms starts playing in my head, and it's just the best feeling ever.
With the
'Cause
other
it's
two
such a
movies,
goated soundtrack.
with the other two movies on the semi-pro perfect trilogy, The Dark Knight and Skyfall, they're both movies
And we
where
had Aitesam too.
no, they're both movies where you get this feeling like over time where you're like, well, that movie's overrated, and then you watch it and you're like, oh, that movie's perfect. Especially The Dark Knight, but even Skyfall too. This movie, I never get that feeling, because, like Josh said, every time it comes up in conversation, I want to watch it again. And so that's why it's probably the best of the three, at least like the most enjoyable of the three, because
It has the most rewatchability to it.
Yeah, I mean, probably. Once again, there's not much happens in this movie other than just incredible action, but there's all these little details that you can just like pick apart and run with. Like you can focus on a different pixel in every frame of this movie and pick up on something you didn't before. And Item, I know you wanted to talk about the soundtrack, so I'll let you do that now because you're a soundtrack nerd.
Hey, I'm just saying, this soundtrack is probably the best realized soundtrack for a movie. Every movie has a soundtrack that kind of fits and doesn't fit. This soundtrack, start to finish, is just high octane action. Just makes your blood pump through you in such a good way. Like I put it up there with, and Josh can agree with me on this. Like the Doom 2018 soundtrack and this just gives you another feeling of like raw barbaric energy. And it's just great.
Barbaric energy is a really good way of describing it. It feels like like primal,
Yeah.
where it's just it absolutely destroys. And like Junkie XL, I'm not going to say that I'm the biggest Junkie XL fan in the world,
How
but
dare you?
I'm not against him. I like him.
He's grown
I'm
on me a
just
lot more recently.
right. But yeah, well, I've been more experienced. Like I've seen him do a lot more stuff recently, which is starting to open my eyes to him. This was the first. I think this was the first movie I ever saw where I was like, oh, that's a Junkie XL soundtrack. Like this is the first time I ever attributed a soundtrack to him, and it's one of my favorites. Like I'll just listen to it when I'm out on a walk, if I'm writing an essay, if I'm working on something. It's so perfect because it's what it needs to be for the movie.
Yeah, Junkie XL. I guess his most recent would be Snyder Cut. He did Godzilla versus Kong. Um,
Army of the Dead is the most
right.
recent one.
I
That's true.
haven't just
Yeah,
watched
he did
Army
do
of the
Army of
Dead.
the Dead.
I could not tell you like none of the soundtrack was memorable for Army of the Dead.
He did Mortal Engines, the movie that literally everyone in the world forgot about the second it was released.
Remember when they were trying to pan that as the new Lord of the Rings because it was from Peter Jackson?
Yeah, how
I
sad.
don't even know what movie Mortal Engines is.
It's
That was the one where like all the countries became cars.
it's Mad Max.
It's
Yeah, it's
Mad
Mad.
Max.
It's like Mad Max but global. No, that was the one where it's like all the countries moved to mobile engines or something. No one saw it. No one
No,
watched it.
not a single person in the world saw that movie. But yeah, that this has been our discussion of Mad Max Fury Road. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Um,
If you haven't seen it, then what are you doing with
if
your
you haven't
life?
seen it, shame on
Change
you.
that.
Shame on
Change
you
it.
for not having seen this movie.
You're doing yourself a huge favor by watching this movie.
Genuinely, yes. I don't agree with Item very often, but right here, right
Hey
now, I
man.
agree with Item
Hey
wholeheartedly.
man.
Apparently, there was 470 hours of footage, so I'm waiting on the the George Miller
The
cut.
Miller
It's the
George
Miller cut.
Release the
Miller
Miller
cut.
cut of Mad Max Fury Road, the 470-hour cut of this movie. Watching just the raw cut of this movie took 3 months before the editor got it cut down. Um, his wife is the one who edited this movie, by the way, in case you wanted to know.
Wow.
But yeah,
I knew that.
definitely watch this movie because it's beautiful. Item, any final words? Would you recommend people watch Mad Max Fury Road?
100%.
And why? Elaborate.
Good action, good visuals, good themes, good acting. Banger of a soundtrack, which makes up for the movie wouldn't be as good if it didn't have that soundtrack. I'm just gonna say it. When the music starts pumping, everything goes like it's like dialed up to 11. Everything's great.
When the music starts pumping, the movie starts thumping. I am going
I
to
hate you
echo
so
all of
much. I
Item.
hate you so
I'm
much.
going to echo all of Item's sentiments. It's once, as me and Josh have said, this is probably, as far as cult movies go, it's not the greatest movie that's ever existed, but it's certainly one of the most fun. And it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And as far as like cult nerdy movies go, it might be the best, and it's definitely as close to perfect as we'll ever get. Um, George Miller, I know you got that sequel planned. I can't wait, and I'm also nervous, but more importantly, I can't wait. because
I
he's
want the
definitely
Miller cut.
listening. Josh, give your final thoughts and then close us out.
My final thoughts are basically everything that you guys have said. It's a fantastic movie that has literally no flaws, and if you think it does, then I urge you to rewatch it because you're wrong. I can tell you that now. Uh, and yeah, this movie's fantastic, and thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Semi-Pro. We hope to see you next week when we don't know what we have planned. It's a huge surprise for everyone involved.
Movie. Everything is uncertain. Something
As
happens.
as I, as Item said, movie.